Nobody joined the Interstellar Combat Academy expecting comfort. That much was obvious from the moment you stepped off the transport and got hit with the smell of recycled air, weapon discharge residue, and what could only be described as multi-species locker room. The facility hung in high orbit above a gas giant nobody bothered naming, all brutalist architecture and reinforced bulkheads that screamed, "We prepare people for war, not vacations." Inside Training Hall 5, the atmosphere was thick enough to cut with a plasma blade. Advanced Combat Assessment Day had arrived, and with it, the kind of tension that made even the confident recruits question their life choices. This wasn't your standard punch-the-target dummy evaluation. No, this was the test that separated actual soldiers from people who'd made a very expensive mistake in their career planning. The hall itself was massive. High ceilings, combat mats arranged in a grid pattern, holographic emitters studded across every surface like technological barnacles. Recruits from a dozen different species clustered in nervous groups, reviewing tactical data on their personal data pads, running through combat forms, or, in the case of Piplocks, a mantis-like creature whose chitinous plates kept clicking anxiously, just trying not to throw up. "You think they'll go easy on us?" Piplocks asked, his mandibles twitching in what passed for nervous laughter among his kind. Hundar, a being composed of living crystal whose facets caught and refracted the overhead lighting into prismatic displays of confidence, scoffed. "Easy? This is the Academy. They don't do easy. They do effective." He flexed his geometric limbs, each movement precise and calculated. "Besides, some of us don't need easy." At the far end of the hall, sitting cross-legged on a bench with her back against the wall, Haley was completely absorbed in her datapad. Not the tactical briefing everyone else was cramming. Not the combat assessment protocols. No, Haley was reading about ancient Earth naval warfare, specifically the Battle of Midway, and she was absolutely fascinated by the part about dive bombers when— "Attention!" The voice belonged to Cormacus, and when Cormacus spoke, people listened. Mostly because he was built like a tank had mated with a nightmare. Reptilian scales the color of old bronze, 4 arms that could each bench press a small transport, and eyes that had seen actual combat in 3 separate wars. He strode into the center of the hall, his boots making deliberate thunks against the deck plating, and every recruit snapped to attention. Every recruit except Haley, who was still reading about Lieutenant Commander McCluskey's decision to continue searching past his fuel point of no return. "Today's assessment," Cormacus began, his voice carrying that particular quality of someone who'd given this speech before and expected you to care anyway, "will test your ability to process tactical information while maintaining combat readiness. In real warfare, you don't get to choose between thinking and fighting. You do both, or you die. Understood?" A chorus of "Yes, Instructor," echoed through the hall. Cormacus's eyes swept across the assembled recruits, and maybe, just maybe, they lingered a fraction of a second longer on the human still reading in the corner. But he said nothing. Yet. "The scenario is simple," he continued, beginning to pace. "You'll face holographic opponents in randomized combat sequences. Simultaneously, you'll analyze tactical data streaming to your devices. Speed, accuracy, and survival all count toward your final score. The simulation adapts to your skill level, so don't think you can—" A quiet snort of laughter interrupted him. Cormacus stopped pacing. "Something amusing, recruit?" Haley glanced up from her datapad, realized everyone was staring at her, and had the decency to look slightly apologetic. Sorry, it's just McCluskey was flying on fumes and still decided to keep searching. That's either brilliant or insane, and I can't figure out which. She held up the datapad, like that explained everything. The silence in the hall could have been weaponized. Cormacus's eye ridge twitched, just once. How delightful that you're entertained. Perhaps you'd like to volunteer to go first? Oh, I mean... Haley started to protest, then shrugged. Sure, okay. Do I need to prep, or... The center mat. Now. Haley stood, still holding her datapad, and made her way to the designated combat area. Other recruits shifted to give her room, some looking sympathetic, others, like Hundar, wearing expressions that suggested they were about to enjoy watching the cocky human get taken down several pegs. The holographic emitters hummed to life around the mat, and Cormacus moved to the control panel. Standard assessment, he announced. 3 opponents, medium difficulty. You'll receive tactical queries on your device. Begin when... Can I keep reading? Haley asked, settling into a comfortable stance that was definitely not any regulation combat form. She looked more like she was waiting for a bus than preparing for a fight. Piplocks made a strangled sound that might have been concern or might have been existential dread. Cormacus's expression could have curdled milk. If you insist on failing spectacularly, by all means. Cool, thanks. The holographic opponents materialized, humanoid shapes glowing with that distinctive blue-white light that said, I'm not real, but I can still make this hurt. They began their attack patterns, circling, looking for openings, moving with the kind of coordinated precision that made experienced fighters nervous. Haley turned her attention back to her datapad, scrolling to the next section about the Japanese carriers. The first hologram lunged. Without looking up, without even acknowledging the attack was happening, Haley's left hand snapped out and caught the hologram's strike mid-swing. Her fingers, wrapped around the simulated wrist with casual precision, redirected the momentum and sent the attacker stumbling past her. She didn't move from her spot, didn't even shift her weight. She definitely didn't stop reading. Huh, she murmured, eyes still on the text. So the Akagi's damage control was actually pretty bad. Makes sense, though, considering the second hologram attacked from behind. Haley's free hand, still holding the datapad, mind you, swept backward in a blocking arc that intercepted the strike perfectly. The hologram's arm collided with her forearm, and the simulation registered a successful defense. Haley turned the page. Piplox's mandibles had stopped clicking. In fact, every part of Piplox had stopped moving entirely, frozen in an expression of absolute disbelief that transcended species. Cormacus leaned forward, his upper set of arms crossing while his lower set gripped the control panel hard enough to leave marks. The third hologram came in low, attempting a leg sweep. Haley hopped over it. A little skip, really, barely more than a shuffle, and landed back in the same spot. Her eyes never left the screen. Oh, that's interesting, she said, tapping the datapad with one finger while simultaneously deflecting another strike with that same hand. The Americans didn't know they'd won until way later. Imagine being in that fight and not even knowing you'd already. All 3 holograms attacked simultaneously, a coordinated assault designed to overwhelm through sheer numbers and timing. Haley blocked the first with her reading hand, datapad still clearly visible, still displaying text. Caught the second attacker's arm with her other hand. And the third? She just moved, shifted her weight, let the attack pass through empty space where she'd been a heartbeat before, and returned to her original position like she'd never moved at all. Got it, she said, presumably to herself, and swiped to answer one of the tactical queries that had appeared on her screen. Her thumb moved across the virtual keyboard, typing out a response about fleet positioning and supply line vulnerabilities. while her other hand batted away another holographic punch like she was shooing an annoying insect. The simulation ramped up the difficulty. 5 opponents now, moving faster, attacking with less predictable patterns. Haley kept reading and typing, and occasionally defending herself with the kind of absent-minded efficiency that suggested she was more annoyed by the interruption than challenged by the threat. "The thing about carrier warfare," she commented to no one in particular, blocking 2 simultaneous strikes without looking, "is that it's all about information and timing. Like, whoever spots the enemy fleet first, basically, hang on, this is a good part, basically wins before the fight even starts. That's wild, right?" A tactical query pinged on her screen. "Describe optimal defensive formations for a 3-ship patrol encountering superior numbers in contested space." Haley's thumb flew across the keyboard, typing out a detailed response about overlapping fields of fire and tactical withdrawal vectors, all while her other hand conducted what could only be described as an extremely casual master class in defensive combat. She wasn't even using proper techniques, just intercepting attacks at their weakest points, redirecting energy, making her opponents work against themselves. It looked less like combat, and more like someone who'd memorized the answer key and was bored with the test. Another query appeared. Calculate fuel consumption for a 6-month deep space patrol accounting for combat operations and emergency reserves. Haley started doing math in her head. You could see her eyes moving, tracking numbers, while simultaneously ducking under a high strike and sweeping a hologram's legs with her foot. She caught the falling opponent with her knee, used the collision to redirect another attacker, and typed out the numerical answer without breaking stride. "Okay, but seriously," she said, still reading about midway. McCluskey's decision was absolutely insane. He had maybe 20 minutes of fuel left, and he's just like, "Nah, let's keep looking." That's the kind of— Cormacus cleared his throat, loudly. Haley glanced up, finally noticing that all the holograms had been automatically disabled. She looked around at the assembled recruits, at their slack-jawed expressions of shock, at Piplox, who appeared to be questioning his entire understanding of reality, at Hundar, whose crystalline face had somehow managed to convey the emotional equivalent of "does not compute." "Oh," Haley said. "Is that it? Sorry. Did I miss something?" The tactical assessment timer on the main display showed she'd completed everything. Every combat sequence, every tactical query, every defensive requirement in 2 minutes and 38 seconds. While reading about a battle that happened 300 years before humanity even developed faster-than-light travel. Cormacus stared at her for a long moment, then at the display, then back at her. "Was that the test?" Haley asked, genuinely confused by the silence. "Because this chapter on naval warfare is really interesting, and I kind of want to finish it before—" "How?" Cormacus interrupted, his voice very quiet, very controlled. "Did you do that?" "Do what?" "That." He gestured at the combat mat, at the disabled holograms, at the perfect score displayed on every metric. Everything, simultaneously. Haley looked down at her datapad, then back at the instructor. "I mean, I just did. You said we had to fight and process tactical info at the same time, so—" She shrugged. "It's not that hard. You just do both things?" Piplox made a sound like air escaping from a pressurized container. Hundar's crystalline structure actually flickered, light refracting in patterns that suggested cognitive dissonance of the highest order. And Cormacus, veteran of 3 wars, trainer of elite soldiers from a dozen species, being who prided himself on never being surprised, just stood there, all 4 arms hanging at his sides, staring at the human recruit who'd just broken every understanding he had about cognitive physical task management. That, he said slowly, should not be possible. Haley tilted her head. But I just did it? So it's definitely possible? Not for any species I've ever trained. Oh, Haley considered this. Huh, weird. So do you want me to go again? Or can I finish this chapter? Because McCluskey's about to spot the Japanese carriers, and I really want to see how— Medical bay, Cormacus said flatly. Now. Wait. What? Why? I'm not hurt. Medical bay, now. Haley sighed the sigh of someone deeply inconvenienced by bureaucracy and shuffled toward the exit, still reading her datapad, still completely oblivious to the fact that she'd just done something that every piece of established xenobiology said was impossible. Behind her, Piplox turned to Hundar. Did that just happen? Hundar's crystalline form pulsed with colors that indicated confusion, frustration, and a deep, unsettling concern that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy had severely underestimated humanity. I think, Hundar said quietly, we need to recalibrate our understanding of human limitations. Or lack thereof, Piplox added. In the corner, Cormacus was already pulling up every piece of footage from Haley's assessment, watching it frame by frame, trying to find the trick, the enhancement, the explanation. Because what he'd just witnessed didn't fit into any biological framework he understood. And somewhere in the medical bay, Haley was still reading about dive bombers, completely unaware that she'd just accidentally triggered what would become the single most important xenobiological investigation in recent galactic history. The scanner might have flared a tactical alert, but the real warning was just beginning. The medical bay smelled like antiseptic and confusion, mostly confusion, if you could bottle that particular emotion and turn it into a scent. Haley sat on an examination table, datapad still in hand, still reading about McCluskey finally spotting the Japanese carrier fleet, while Dr. Kalimox circled her like she was an unsolved equation that had personally offended him. Dr. Kalimox was, to put it mildly, not having a good day. His species, the Quilnar, prided themselves on scientific precision and biological understanding. They had 17 tentacles specifically evolved for delicate research work, 3 separate brains for parallel processing, and a cultural obsession with categorizing literally everything in the known universe. Meeting something that didn't fit into existing categories made them itchy, metaphorically speaking. Quilnar didn't actually have skin. "Run it again," he said to his assistant, a younger Quilnar named Bixic, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Doctor, we've run the scan 6 times. "Then run it a 8th time, Bixic. Clearly, we're missing something." The bioscanner hummed over Haley's head again, bathing her in soft blue light that was probably doing something important, but mostly just made her shadow look weird on the wall. She turned another page on her datapad without looking up. "Can you at least pretend to take this seriously?" Dr. Kalimox asked, 3 of his tentacles gesturing in what might have been exasperation or might have been the Quilnar equivalent of throwing one's hands up. "I am being serious," Haley replied. "I'm seriously trying to finish this chapter. Do you know how hard it is to find good historical analysis of pre-spaceflight naval tactics? Most databases just have the basic facts, but this author actually gets into the decision-making process and you defended against 8 simultaneous holographic opponents while solving complex tactical problems and reading recreational material," Dr. Kalimox interrupted, his central eye cluster focusing on her with unnerving intensity. "That should be neurologically impossible. But it's not, because I did it. That's—" he paused, several tentacles twitching. That's not how impossibility works. Seems like it is, though. Bixic coughed, or made the Quilnar sound that served the same social function. Doctor, the scan results are identical to the previous 6. No cybernetic enhancements, no neural augmentation, no chemical optimization, no genetic modification markers. She's baseline human, completely unmodified. Dr. Kalamox's tentacles drooped slightly. That cannot be correct. I mean, I could have told you that, Haley offered. I'm pretty sure I'd remember if someone stuck computer parts in my brain. Then how? Dr. Kalamox moved closer, his tentacles gesturing in patterns that suggested deep cognitive struggle. Every species we've studied has a fundamental limitation on cognitive physical task division. The Herknal can think or fight, but not both simultaneously. The Mishtar can process multiple data streams, but lose physical coordination while doing so. Even my own people with our 3-brain structure must dedicate specific neural clusters to specific tasks. We can't just do everything at once. Oh. Haley finally looked up from her datapad, genuine curiosity replacing her mild annoyance. Really? That's weird. How do you guys eat dinner? The medical bay went very quiet. I'm sorry, Dr. Kalamox said slowly. What does nutrient consumption have to do with... Like, when you eat dinner, what do? Haley asked. Just sit there and eat? That sounds incredibly boring. Yes? We consume nutrients. That's the activity. What else would we be doing? Haley's expression suggested she'd just discovered aliens were somehow even weirder than she'd thought. You've never eaten dinner while watching a movie and texting? That's like 3 things at once. Multiple tentacles went rigid. You process entertainment while consuming nutrients while communicating? Well, yeah. Otherwise dinner would take forever and be boring. Sometimes I'll throw in checking my schedule too, so that's 4 things. She paused. Is that not normal? Bixic made a sound like a pressure valve releasing. Doctor, I think I need to sit down. You don't have legs, Bixic. I need to do whatever the equivalent is for our species. Dr. Kalamox was already moving to his primary terminal, tentacles flying across multiple interfaces simultaneously, which, Haley noted with some irony, was itself a form of multitasking. How many simultaneous cognitive processes can you maintain? He asked, his voice taking on that particular tone scientists get when they've stumbled onto something that's going to consume the next 3 years of their lives. Haley considered this. I don't know. I've never counted. How would you even count something like that? Describe a typical morning routine. Okay. I wake up, check messages while brushing my teeth, usually have something playing on my datapad, podcast or music or whatever, while I'm getting dressed, which I'm also using to plan what I need to do that day, and sometimes I'll remember something I need to look up, so I'll make a mental note while also, doing all the other stuff. She shrugged. Normal morning things? Every tentacle in the room had stopped moving. That's 5 separate cognitive processes, Dr. Kalamox said quietly. Minimum, running simultaneously, before you're fully awake. I mean, it's not like they're complicated processes. That's not the point. Several tentacles gestured wildly. The complexity is irrelevant. It's the simultaneity. You're running multiple independent cognitive threads without any apparent processing degradation. Oh, Haley thought about this. Is that special? Special? It's... Dr. Kalamox caught himself, tentacles settling into a more professional arrangement. It's unprecedented in any species we've encountered. The human brain is structured similarly to dozens of other sapient species. You shouldn't be able to do this. But we can? Apparently so. He turned to Bixic. Contact the human dormitory. I want every human recruit on this station down here for testing. Immediately. Wait, Haley said. You think other humans can do this too? That's what we're going to find out. 2 hours later, the medical bay looked less like a medical facility and more like a very confused circus. 6 human recruits stood in various states of bewilderment while Dr. Kalimox ran them through increasingly absurd tests. One was juggling, literally juggling, while solving math problems and holding a conversation about proper rifle maintenance. Another was doing push-ups while debugging code on a floating display and explaining the plot of some Earth movie called The Princess Bride to a fascinated Piplox. This is my favorite part, the recruit, a guy named Tommy, said between push-ups. So Wesley's been mostly dead all day, and he knocked out 5 more push-ups. Miracle Max gives him this pill, right? But the dosage is all wrong according to standard medicine, which makes sense because he corrected a syntax error in the code without breaking rhythm. Miracle Max isn't exactly AMA certified, if you know what I... 3 more push-ups. Mean. Piplox's mandibles were clicking so fast, they were almost humming. How are you doing that? Doing what? All of it. Tommy paused mid-push-up. Oh, I'm just doing it. Dr. Kalimox was taking notes so frantically that 2 of his tentacles had cramped. Every human we've tested demonstrates the same capability, some more pronounced than others, but the baseline ability is universal to the species. Haley, who'd been watching from her examination table and had finally finished her chapter about Midway, raised her hand. So this is just a human thing? We're the only ones who can do this? It appears so, yes. Huh. She processed this. That seems like it would have come up in xenobiology class. It should have, Dr. Kalimox admitted. The fact that it didn't suggests a massive oversight in our understanding of human neurology. Or, his tentacles twisted in a way that suggested uncomfortable realization, humans are so accustomed to this capability that they never thought to mention it because they assumed everyone could do it. I mean, yeah, Tommy said, still holding his push-up position. Why would we mention something normal? Because it's not normal, Bixic practically shouted. It's extraordinary. It's remarkable. He paused. It's actually kind of unfair, if I'm being honest. How is it unfair? Haley asked. You guys have other advantages, right? Like, Piplox can see in way more spectrums than we can. Hundar's entire body is basically living computer crystal. Cormacus has 4 arms. Yes, but those are physical adaptations, Dr. Kalimox explained. This is a fundamental cognitive architecture difference. You're not just better at multitasking than other species, you operate on an entirely different processing paradigm. It's like... He struggled for an analogy. It's like discovering one species can see in 4 dimensions, while everyone else is stuck with 3. One of the other human recruits, a woman named Priya, looked up from where she'd been doing a handstand while reciting chemical formulas and braiding her own hair. Wait, you guys can't see in 4 dimensions, right? Because that would be way more useful than the thing we're doing. No, Priya, that was an analogy. Oh, good. That would have been weird. Dr. Kalimox turned back to his terminal, pulling up neural imaging from all the human recruits. The structure is similar across all of you. Your prefrontal cortex has an unusually high degree of parallel processing capability. Your corpus callosum facilitates rapid interhemispheric communication, and He paused, tentacles freezing mid-gesture. Oh, no. What? Haley asked. Military command is going to want to know about this. Is that bad? Depends on your perspective. Dr. Kalimax's eye clusters focused on her. You've just accidentally revealed that humans have been operating at a fraction of their potential usefulness in tactical situations. Every command position, every multi-role assignment, every scenario where we need someone to coordinate while actively engaged, humans should have been the first choice. But we weren't. You were classified as moderate cognitive capacity with adequate physical capabilities. Standard mid-tier placement. He gestured at the data displays. This changes everything. A human commander can actively fight while coordinating fleet movements, managing logistics, analyzing enemy patterns, and maintaining communications. No other species can do that. Not without splitting those tasks among multiple individuals. The medical bay had gone very quiet again, but this time it was a different kind of quiet. The kind that happens when people realize the implications of something much bigger than the immediate situation. Tommy finished his push-up set and stood up, brushing off his hands. So what you're saying is, we're really good at doing lots of stuff at once, and this is somehow a surprise to everyone except us. Essentially, yes. Cool, Tommy shrugged. Can I go back to the dorms? I've got a combat sim scheduled in 20 minutes, and I wanted to finish this coding assignment and maybe grab lunch first. You're planning to do all three things simultaneously, aren't you? I mean, yeah? Otherwise I'd run out of time. Dr. Kalimax watched Tommy leave, then turned to Haley. Your species is either an evolutionary miracle or an evolutionary accident. I haven't decided which. Can it be both? Possibly. He made a notation on his datapad, all 17 tentacles working in coordination. I'm filing a full report with command. This needs to be incorporated into strategic planning immediately. Are we in trouble? Trouble? No. His tentacles arranged themselves in what might have been a smile, if Quilnar could smile. But you've just made every human recruit exponentially more valuable than they were yesterday morning. So prepare for your training assignments to get significantly more complicated. Great, Haley said with absolutely no enthusiasm. More tests. Actually, Dr. Kalimax pulled up another display. I need you to do one more thing for me. What? Go back to your normal routine. Act like this conversation never happened. I want to observe how you naturally integrate these capabilities without conscious attention to them. So, just be myself? Precisely. Haley hopped off the examination table, datapad in hand. That's literally the easiest assignment I've ever gotten. Do I get extra credit? Just go, Haley. She left the medical bay, already pulling up a new article about submarine warfare while mentally reviewing her afternoon schedule, and humming something that might have been a song from 3 centuries ago. Behind her, Dr. Kalimax turned to Bixic. Notify command. Tell them we need to convene an emergency faculty meeting. About the humans? About the humans. He looked at the data one more time, all his eye clusters focusing on the neural scans that showed something that shouldn't exist, but clearly did. We've been teaching them wrong, training them wrong, utilizing them wrong. And if we don't correct this immediately... Sir? Some other military power is going to figure this out, Dr. Kalimax finished quietly. And they'll use it against us. In the hallway, completely oblivious to the strategic implications she'd just triggered, Haley was reading about torpedo angles while walking, chewing gum, and mentally composing a message to her friend back on Earth about how weird aliens were about dinner. Just another normal day. Except it really wasn't. The main combat arena was built for spectacle. High vaulted ceilings, observation galleries that could hold 300 spectators, and enough holographic emitters to simulate everything from asteroid fields to urban warfare. Right now, It was packed with recruits who'd heard rumors about the impossible human and wanted to see if the stories were true. Hundar stood at the center of the arena floor, his crystalline body catching the overhead lights and scattering them into rainbow patterns across the walls. He looked confident. More than confident. He looked like someone who'd figured out the punchline before the joke finished. "This is ridiculous," Piplox muttered from the observation gallery. "Hundar's going to humiliate her." "Or get humiliated himself," offered another recruit, a slug-like being named Crix, who left slime trails wherever he went. "I watched the training footage. Haley wasn't even trying." "Exactly. She wasn't trying because it was basic assessment. This?" Piplox gestured at the arena. "This is Hundar. He placed first in combat rankings for 3 cycles straight. His species processes tactical information faster than our computers do." Down in the arena, Cormacus stood between Hundar and Haley, looking like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. His 4 arms were crossed in what could only be described as maximum disapproval. "You understand what you're agreeing to?" he asked Haley. She shrugged, datapad tucked under one arm. "Hundar wants to prove I got lucky. I fight some holograms while doing other stuff. If I fail, humans get labeled as single-track specialists, whatever that means. If I win, I have to explain how we cheat biology." She made air quotes. "Does that cover it?" "You seem remarkably unconcerned." "Should I be concerned?" Cormacus looked at her for a long moment. "Most recruits would be terrified. Most recruits probably didn't spend their morning arguing with Dr. Kalimox about whether eating cereal while checking messages counts as legitimate multitasking." Haley glanced at Hundar, who was doing elaborate stretching routines that made his crystalline structure refract light in increasingly complex patterns. "Is he always this extra?" "Extra? Dramatic. Showy. You know? Extra." A sound that might have been a suppressed laugh came from Cormacus's throat. "Just try not to break him too badly. His ego is already fragile." "I heard that," Hundar called out, his voice carrying the harmonic quality of wind chimes made of knives. "And my ego is perfectly intact, unlike this human's understanding of biological limitations." "Okay, see, that's exactly what I mean by extra," Haley said to Cormacus. "Who talks like that?" "Begin when ready," Cormacus announced, stepping back to the arena edge and trying very hard not to smile. The holographic emitters activated with a low hum that Haley felt in her teeth. A massive tactical display materialized in the air beside her, a 3-dimensional star chart showing fleet positions, supply lines, and enemy movements. Simultaneously, 6 combat holograms shimmered into existence, arranged in an attack formation that had probably been designed by someone who really wanted to see her fail. "The rules," Hundar announced, because apparently he was in charge now, "are simple. Defend yourself while managing that tactical scenario. I've programmed it to require constant attention. One mistake, and simulated people die. Let's see your precious human multitasking handle." Haley's hand shot up. "Quick question. Can I still read my book?" The arena went silent. "Your book?" Hundar's crystalline face somehow managed to convey utter disbelief. "Yeah, I'm at a really good part. This submarine commander is trying to sink a carrier, and the math on torpedo spread is actually fascinating. No, no books. This is a combat assessment." "Okay, but you didn't say no books in the rules." "I shouldn't have to say no books." "Seems like an oversight in your planning," Haley observed. "But fine, whatever. Let's get this over with. I'm supposed to meet Piplox for lunch in like 30 minutes. The holograms attacked. And Haley didn't stop being Haley. Her right hand moved to the tactical display, fingers dancing across controls as she rerouted supply ships and adjusted fleet formations. Her left hand, empty now, tragically bookless, handled combat with the kind of casual efficiency that suggested she was swatting flies rather than fighting advanced military simulations. Block, redirect, counter, all while her eyes tracked the star chart, and her mouth provided running commentary. Okay, so the Third Fleet needs to pull back. She ducked under a holographic strike, because their supply line is overextended, and caught another hologram's arm, used its momentum to throw it into a third opponent. If you push them forward now, they'll be vulnerable to the flanking force that's clearly setting up in sector. Hang on, let me check. She zoomed in on part of the display while simultaneously fighting off two holograms with footwork alone. Yeah, Sector 19, see? Ambush formation. Hundar was staring. Not fighting, not commenting, just staring with the intensity of someone watching their entire worldview crumble in real time. The thing about fleet tactics, Haley continued, adjusting defensive formations while blocking strikes, is that it's really similar to submarine warfare. You're trying to predict where the enemy will be, not where they are. So if you... She executed a spinning kick that caught a hologram in what would have been its chest if holograms had organs, extrapolate their current vector, and account for fuel consumption, and, typing rapidly on the tactical display, you can position your forces to... Cormacus added something to the simulation. A text box appeared in front of Haley. Defend the philosophical position that individual sacrifice is justified for collective survival. Minimum 300 words. You have 90 seconds. Haley didn't miss a beat. Literally, she maintained perfect rhythm in both combat and tactical management while simultaneously launching into philosophical debate. Okay, so the whole individual versus collective thing is actually more nuanced than people think, she began, her hands never stopping their work. Because you're assuming that individual and collective interests are inherently opposed, which, block, redirect, fleet adjustment. They're not always. Like, if I sacrifice myself to save my squad, that's individual choice serving collective need. But it's still my choice, which means typing, fighting, thinking. The individual agency is preserved even in the act of sacrifice. So really, you're not choosing between individual and collective. You're choosing how to dodge, counterstrike, supply reroute, integrate them. And that integration is what actually defines functional societies because... She kept going. 300 words exactly, delivered while fighting 6 opponents and managing a fleet battle that had expanded to include siege scenarios and resource allocation puzzles. When she finished, all tasks completed, all metrics perfect, Haley finally stopped and looked around. Was that okay? I feel like I rushed the conclusion a bit. Hundar made a sound like breaking glass. In the observation gallery, Piplocks turned to Crix. Did she just win everything while complaining about rushing? Crix finished. Yeah, she did. Down in the arena, Haley checked the time. Cool. Still got 20 minutes before lunch. So, Hundar, you wanted an explanation? The crystalline being just stood there, light refracting through his structure in patterns that suggested complete cognitive breakdown. Right, Haley said. Explanation. Okay, so humans evolved on a death world where everything wanted to eat us, and our ancestors had to watch for predators while making tools while teaching kids while cooking food. You evolve or you die. We evolved. Parallel processing became baseline because the ones who couldn't do it got eaten by something with big teeth and bad attitudes. She said it so casually, like she was explaining how to make toast. "That's it?" Hundar finally managed. "That's your secret? You come from a nightmare planet?" "I mean, yeah, Earth's pretty rough, but it's home." Cormacus stepped forward. Match concluded. Haley wins, obviously. He looked at Hundar. "Satisfied?" The crystalline being flickered. "No, but I accept the results." Haley was already heading toward the exit. "Great! Piplocks, you still want to grab food? I'm starving. Fighting makes me hungry." Behind her, the assembled recruits were all processing what they'd witnessed, a human doing the impossible while treating it like a mild inconvenience before lunch. Just another day at the academy. Except now everyone knew. Humans were playing an entirely different game than the rest of the galaxy. And they didn't even realize it was special. The command briefing room smelled like recycled air and career anxiety. 5 senior officers sat around a table that was probably designed to look impressive, but mostly just looked expensive. Cormacus stood at the head, 4 arms crossed, looking like he'd rather be back in the training hall where problems could be solved with proper conditioning and creative use of obstacle courses. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," said Commander Bextor, a being composed mostly of bioluminescent gases contained in a vaguely humanoid environmental suit. "Humans can coordinate fleet operations while simultaneously engaging in ground combat?" "And philosophical debate," Cormacus added. "Don't forget the philosophical debate." "I'm trying very hard to forget the philosophical debate because it's giving me an existential crisis," Dr. Kalimak said from his corner, tentacles wrapped around a mug of something that steamed ominously. "Do you understand what this means strategically? Every command position we've ever designed assumes you need separate personnel for tactical planning and combat leadership. Humans can do both, simultaneously, while eating lunch." "The lunch thing seems excessive," Bextor muttered. "The lunch thing is the point. They don't even consider it unusual." Admiral Prixion, a towering insectoid with compound eyes that saw in dimensions most species couldn't process, leaned forward. "We've been misallocating human resources since first contact. Every human we've placed in support roles could have been commanding while fighting. Every tactical position we've staffed with multiple specialists could have been handled by one human." "That's a little reductive," Cormacus interjected. "They're not invincible. They still have normal physical limitations, standard reaction times. For their species, average lifespan. But they can think and act independently across multiple cognitive domains without performance degradation," Dr. Kalimak interrupted. "That's not a minor advantage. That's a fundamental tactical superiority in any scenario requiring adaptive response." "So what do we do?" Bextor asked. "Reorganize our entire command structure around human neurology?" "We utilize them appropriately," Admiral Prixion said, "which means advanced command training, multi-role specialization, positions that actually leverage their capabilities instead of—" She consulted her datapad, filing maintenance reports and running inventory checks. Cormacus nodded. "I've already updated the training protocols. Humans will start receiving command scenarios that assume multitasking as baseline rather than advanced skill." "How are they taking it?" "Most of them haven't noticed yet. They think it's normal curriculum adjustment." 3 weeks later, Haley sat in the Academy commissary with Piplocks, eating something that might have been noodles while reviewing fleet tactics on her datapad and listening to Piplocks explain the cultural significance of his species' molting rituals. "So the old exoskeleton becomes part of the ceremonial armor?" she asked, slurping noodles while highlighting relevant passages about pincer movements in the tactical manual. "Exactly. It's a symbol of growth through—" "Wait!" Are you actually listening or just being polite? Both? I can do both. She looked up, grinning. The old shell becomes the new armor. That's actually beautiful. Your people have really good metaphors. Piplox's mandibles clicked in pleasure. You're weird. You know that? I've been hearing that a lot lately. Hundar approached their table, his crystalline structure somehow managing to look sheepish despite being made of living mineral. May I join you? Haley gestured at an empty seat. Sure. Fair warning, though. Piplox is explaining molting rituals, and I'm reading about historical naval tactics. So the conversation is kind of all over the place. Hundar settled into the chair. That's fine. I actually wanted to apologize. For what? For being, what was your word? Extra? Haley laughed. You were protecting your pride. That's pretty universal, I think. No apology needed. Still, I was wrong about humans. About you specifically. His facets caught the commissary lights, scattering rainbow patterns across the table. My species prides itself on cognitive superiority, processing speed, calculation accuracy, parallel computing. We're living calculators. But you, he paused, you made me realize that raw processing power isn't the same as functional intelligence. That's weirdly profound for lunch conversation, Haley observed. I've been thinking about it a lot. Hundar's structure flickered with colors that suggested embarrassment. Your species isn't better than mine. We're just different. You evolved for adaptive multitasking. We evolved for pure computational throughput. Neither is superior. They're just optimized for different survival pressures. Piplox clicked thoughtfully. So, we all have advantages. Humans multitask, Hundar's people calculate. My species processes multiple sensory spectrums simultaneously. And together, we're more capable than any single species could be, Haley finished. She closed her datapad, giving them both her full attention. You know what's funny? Back on Earth, we thought our multitasking was kind of a bug, not a feature. Like, we're easily distracted. We have terrible attention spans. We can't focus on one thing for extended periods without getting bored. Turns out, that's actually useful in the right context. Useful? Hundar's harmonic voice carried notes of amusement. Haley, you broke our entire understanding of cognitive capability while complaining about missing lunch. That's beyond useful. That's legendary. I was really hungry, though. Piplox laughed, a chittering sound that was surprisingly infectious. You're impossible. Nah, I'm just human. We're all like this. Haley picked up her datapad again. Which reminds me, did you guys hear about the new training protocols? Apparently, they're adding simultaneous combat command scenarios to advanced curriculum. That seems designed specifically for humans, Hundar observed. Probably. But hey, you guys can try it too. Maybe you'll surprise yourselves. Later that evening, Cormacus watched surveillance footage of the commissary conversation, his 4 arms at rest, something almost like a smile on his reptilian features. They're adapting well, Dr. Calamax said, appearing beside him with his ever-present mug of threatening beverage. They're making friends, learning from each other. That's the point of multi-species training. And the humans? Still completely oblivious to how remarkable they are. Cormacus closed the footage, which is possibly their greatest strength. They don't think of themselves as special, so they don't limit themselves based on what should be possible. Cosmically unfair, Dr. Calamax agreed. Absolutely. Cormacus stood. And exactly what we need. In the commissary, Haley was teaching Piplox about Earth music while Hundar attempted, and failed, to eat noodles and read simultaneously. How do you make this look easy? Hundar asked, frustrated. Practice, Haley said, grinning. Start small. Try walking and talking. I can walk and talk. Great. Now do it while thinking about something else. Hundar tried. Walked into a table. Piplox's laughter echoed through the commissary, and Haley joined in, and even Hundar's crystalline structure flickered with colors that suggested reluctant amusement. Different species, different strengths, same team. That was the real victory. Everything else was just details.